In my opinion, bow hunting is the most thrilling way to hunt. It requires you to get up close and personal, spending more time observing that deer before you ultimately take a shot. But if you're new to bow hunting, it can seem a little intimidating. Even the best hunters find bow hunting challenging, but it's very rewarding when it all comes together. So in this video, we're going to go over 5 beginner bow hunting tips. Now I'm going to skip the extreme basics like making sure you're sighted in, and I'm going to assume you've practiced enough that you will hit where you're aiming. I've done a few videos going over how to make good ethical shots, and I will link them here. Before we get into the tips, do me a favor, and if this is your first time on my channel, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. Also, I created a few shirts, some merch, so if you would like to support the channel, check out the link below. And the first beginner bow hunting tip is you need to be good at judging distance. I know that in today's world, gadgets are king, and there are a few products that I firmly believe you should invest in, some of them even godsends, but they should not be relied on 100% of the time. One of these is a good rangefinder. Now, you should invest in a decent rangefinder at some point. However, if you're just getting started in bow hunting, there's some other things you should probably focus on. That includes having a well-maintained bow, a good sight, a decent release, good arrows, sharp broadheads. The list goes on. Those things you cannot live without. A rangefinder, you can. And even if you do have a rangefinder, being able to accurately judge distance without it is a vital tool that everybody needs to have in their playbook. Now, there are a lot of different tips and tricks, and everybody has their own preferred method for doing this. And I actually did an entire video going over specifically how to get better at judging distance, so make sure you check that out. And the second tip is to practice like you're hunting. Now, I know I said at the beginning of this video I was going to assume that you've practiced enough that you are able to hit what you're aiming at, but this goes beyond just simply drawing and shooting. Shooting at a square target that is on the same plane as you is only going to prepare you so much. That's good for correcting your form, building that muscle memory, but you need to practice in real hunting situations. If you hunt strictly from a tree stand, you need to practice shooting from an elevated position. And if you strictly hunt from a blind, you need to practice shooting from that blind in a seated position. Your form changes when you have to account for the angle from being in a tree stand or from shooting from a seated position. There's one habit that took me a long time to break, and that was when I'm in a tree stand, when I draw and shoot, I would bend from my arms to shoot down instead of my waist. That changes the angle of your shot, it changes your sight picture, and it can throw off your shot. It could mean the difference between shooting a deer and giving it a haircut. Another practice tip for real hunting situations is to practice with only one arrow. This raises the stakes and forces you to make that one shot count. And the third beginner bow hunting tip is to always pack an extra release. Trust me, you will need this extra release at least a few times per season. There's nothing worse than realizing that you left your release at the truck, except for realizing you left your release at home, which is about an hour away. Your spare release doesn't need to be anything fancy or an expensive model. This one is just a cheap one from Walmart. The only important thing is that is a similar style. I shoot buckle strap releases, so I have a spare buckle strap. If you shoot a thumb release, you should have a spare thumb release in your backpack. And always leave it in your backpack. Don't ever take it out. And I guarantee you, if I don't put this back in my backpack, as soon as I'm done, I'm going to leave it. Because there has been times that I have forgotten my release and my spare release. And the fourth beginner bow hunting tip is you need to be able to identify where you hit that deer by looking at your arrow. Now, you'll probably have a vague idea where you hit that deer just by following the path of your arrow, especially if you're using lighted nocks. And if you're watching how that deer's running off or looking for blood spurting out, this stuff will give you a clue on how good that shot was. However, when your adrenaline is going, you don't always remember things or see things as clearly as you normally would. So knowing how to identify what type of blood is on your arrow will help you when it comes time to track that deer down. And so the first thing you need to do after you shoot that deer is, once your adrenaline's gone down enough that you're not shaking so bad, climb down and find your arrow. Study your arrow and look at the color of the blood that's on it. Bright red or pinkish blood means that you hit lung, and you'll probably see some air bubbles on it and some blood splatters around. This is what you're after. Hopefully you hit a double lung and that deer is dead pretty close by. Wait at least a half an hour though, just in case. An arrow with dark red blood on it indicates a liver shot, and this one might take a little while, unfortunately, before it dies. Wait at least a couple of hours before you start trailing that deer because it probably didn't bed too far away, and if you go too soon, you risk bumping it even farther. If your arrow has a greenish color, maybe a few spots of dark red or brown, that's a good indication that you hit guts. You can usually tell right off the bat if you gut shot a deer or not, and you can also tell by the smell of it. It stinks really bad. It's best to wait at least 10 hours before going after this deer. Maybe even better to just wait overnight. Just be prepared to not sleep very well at all. The odds of recovery go down the farther back you hit that deer, and that's why as a beginner, I recommend you stick to only high percentage shots. Try to only shoot when that deer is broadside. And also no tricky shots and know your effective range. It's not worth wounding that deer. The fifth beginner bow hunting tip is just to simply enjoy the hunt. Bow hunting is challenging. That's the main reason it draws so many people to it. There will be times you will have a really good buck within range, but he just never presents you with a good shot. It's very frustrating, but just know that it happens to all of us. You just have to learn how to relax and, more importantly, be patient. And that's something that will pay off in many aspects of your life. And so that was 5 tips for beginner bow hunters. If you have any more tips, leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.